Changing up camera shots can make your scenes more dynamic. In part 2 of this 3-part video series, I'll show you how to place Cartoon Animator's camera and how to animate your character's body using pre-made motions so the movements better align with what the character is saying. So here we are in Cartoon Animator, and this is the project file or project that we were working on in part 1. It's just the character set up on a background with the lip sync already done.
Hi.
Play that.
I'm Animate Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free, and my pack includes this template project of me in my gaming room.
Right, I'm not going to play the whole thing because we're going to be listening to that quite a bit through this video. But the first thing we want to do before we start animating anything is to decide whether we're going to keep one static camera shot or whether we're going to move the camera around a bit to create some interest and to make the whole scene a little bit more dynamic and interesting than just looking at one continuous shot. And the way we're going to do that is using, generally for a scene like this, we might go with 2, possibly 3 camera shots. We've got this one you're looking at now on the record stage. This is what the actual animation or camera that will be recorded to our animation file. Everything inside this outer red square here. We can see we're on the camera by looking at the camera selection window up here, and we've got the record button up here. And to help us decide whether we want to place the camera, we're going to go into the timeline and open up the face track. If you're continuing straight on from the last video, that'll probably already be open like it is here, but if not, remember you just click on the face button and voice clip, this little triangle, and that'll get you in here. The other track we're interested in is the track for this camera, or where all the keyframes for this camera will be stored. To get to that, we want to click on this icon at the start here. You'll see we've got this project menu here, which we want to turn on. You'll see that's now added to the timeline here. We've got camera, but we want a specific camera. If we just stopped at this now and opened up camera, we'd get this switcher track, which is used for live performance and multi-camera animations where you want to have different cameras on separate tracks. We don't need that, so we're going to shut that down, and we're going to open up the actual track for the camera that we've got displayed. To do that, go back into this menu and you'll see we've got this camera thing here, and we've got camera there because that's the name of our camera. Just put a little tick in that, and you'll see it didn't look like anything actually happened, but if we scroll down, you'll see now there's a camera track down here, and all we want is to open up the transform track and look at these keyframes. You can actually bring this up a little bit here, lighting up that, so we can see the transform track. This is where all the keyframes for moving the camera will appear. So currently we're on keyframe 0. That's what's holding this particular position in. If I move the playhead over to frame 20 and then say I use the camera zoom tool and click and drag and zoom in, you'll see now the frame has been made there, and when I drag the playhead, you'll see the camera will zoom in and out between those 2 points. If you don't want the camera to zoom between the previous keyframe and the next one, you can click on this keyframe or the next keyframe where you don't want it to zoom to, right click and select transition curve. You'll see these transition curve settings come up. All of these do different things, but we're just going to focus on the step one, which what that does is make sure that the keyframe before this one holds its position all the way through all these keyframes until we hit the current one. So you'll see as soon as I click on this, you'll see we'll get a preview of what's going to happen between this keyframe and the previous one. So if I click on it,
Hi.
see it went immediately back this keyframe until we go past this one. And if we wanted to change this now, we've got to make sure that's still selected and change it back to linear.
Hi.
And you'll see now we've got that direct animation of the camera where it's zooming in. We can also move keyframes around, so I'm just going to leave that there for now. Say we wanted this keyframe to be further down, we can just click and drag and move it around. See, it still works the same. You get the animation between the previous and the next one. We can copy keyframes, so we can right click, copy, move it over to here, go paste. You'll see not much is happening between that because they're identical, but if I now click on that one and delete it, you'll see now we get that animation between this camera frame and that camera frame. So hopefully that's enough explanation for how keyframes of the camera work. What we're going to do now is decide how we're going to actually film this character. So I'm going to delete this keyframe at the moment. And we're going to just basically listen to her talk and decide what type of camera shot we're going to use. Generally you would start with a wide shot like this, which is basically known as a medium wide shot and can be used as what's known as an establishing shot. Usually an establishing shot will show you the whole scene with full body views of the characters in it, but because we're in a smaller space of a room and we can pretty much see most of the room behind her, our establishing shot can be this particular medium wide close-up, or medium wide shot if you like, because it gives us all the information of where this scene is happening and who is in the scene. So we're going to start with that shot.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion?
Now that we've got that establishing shot, we can move in a bit closer and make it feel a little bit more personal. Generally when you move in a character, it's sort of you as the viewer are being drawn more into the conversation. You're getting closer. It's like you're more as if you're standing next to the character and talking to them rather than standing across the room and talking to them. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to zoom the camera in just a little bit. Not all the way in, and we're going to pan the camera with the pan tool so that she's on the screen a bit more. And this sort of framing where you get the upper body, shoulders and the head in, it's kind of, I guess that would be called a medium close-up, and it's pretty standard for this sort of talk to camera type situation that we've got in this particular scene. We see now that I've moved the camera around. If we go back to timeline below, you'll see that's put a keyframe here, but as I demonstrated earlier, that's going to animate the camera in, and I don't want that. I want the camera to immediately cut to this when it gets to that point. I'll select it, right click, transition curve, and we'll select this step function.
I'm Anime Amy.
At this point, rid of this again. I'm going to listen to her speak again, see what she's saying.
Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace?
So since she's talking about herself there, it makes sense to get closer to her.
I'm completely free and my pack includes this.
So when she's talking, I'm completely free and my pack includes.
This template
So when she's mentioning the template project, that's a good time to zoom out so that you can see what she's referring to. So we might go around about there, and if we wanted to go with the same shot that we had at the beginning, we can remember that we're on frame 215 here. We can go back to the first shot, select that, right click and do copy, go to frame 215 just by typing it into that box, and then now in the camera track, right click, go paste. You'll see now that's zoomed out, but again it's animating out, so we want it to switch out directly. Let's do transition curve and add in our step curve.
Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free and my pack includes.
So after she says me in my gaming room, we could go back to that closer shot. So about there. Frame 295. We want to copy this frame here. Right click, copy. 295. Right click, paste. And then again, Just make sure the transition curve is already on step, which it is.
Template project of me in my gaming room. Did you know you can learn to make and rig characters just like me with the Lazy Animators free course? The fastest way to rig and animate.
When she's about to say the fastest way to do something, we could emphasize that by really getting in close on her face. There we go, about there. We'll zoom right in on her face. We show a bit of the tops of her shoulders, so she doesn't look like she's a head on a stick. And again, we'll change the transition curve to make sure it's on step.
Did you know you can learn to make and rig characters just like me with the Lazy Animators free course? The fastest way to rig and animate your first character in Cartoon Animator. You'll find the...
After that, we might want to return. So that's 650. We might want to return back to the keyframe where she was this one. And right click, copy, what do I say, 650 I think. Up here, go paste.
The fastest way to rig and animate your first character in Cartoon Animator. You'll find the link in this video's description. It's completely beginner friendly and you'll learn so much.
When she's starting to go, it's completely beginner friendly. We could actually do that close up again just to sort of give it that more personal thing. We could try it. We'll just go copy that one. And you can actually get to the next keyframe by hitting the tab key. If you've got that one selected and hit tab, it'll take you to the next one, and shift tab will take you to the previous one. So we'll go.
You'll find the link in this video's description. It's complete.
I'll put it about there. And it's already on step, as you can see from that flyout, transition curve step, so we don't need to check it. Go play.
It's completely beginner friendly and you'll learn so much.
Right, so that's all our camera shots. We'll just play it through so you can see how much more interesting that is to watch than just watching the one static shot.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free and my pack includes this template project of me in my gaming room. Did you know you can learn to make and rig characters just like me with the Lazy Animators free course? The fastest way to rig and animate your first character in Cartoon Animator. You'll find the link in this video's description. It's completely beginner friendly and you'll learn so much.
You can see there, without even adding any character animation at all, it's already more interesting to watch all the way through. It feels like it's running through the scene a little bit quicker than if you just were looking at the one camera shot the whole way through. So now that we've done that, and the reason why we did that is so that we know at which points we need to actually do animation on the body of the character. So you can see in this last scene here, it's mostly looking at the character's head, and in this scene we wouldn't need to do very much animation of the character's body at all. Doing it this way, getting in our camera shots first, is helping us save time when it comes to animating the character's body. Before we go any further, I'm going to close the project track down, give us some room, and we may still want to keep the voice track open so that we can see where different bits of dialogue are being said, and we'll keep the camera track open so we know we can see where the actual camera transitions occur. But for the sake of this animation, I'm going to stick with using the free resources. You can see under the templates pack tab, we scroll down here, free resource. You can see we've got some free packs in here. This pack has all of the animation clips in it that are free that come with Cartoon Animator. I'm going to stick with that, but I'm going to double click into this one, and I'm going to minimize this top part up here by clicking this little arrow so we can see more of what's actually in here. See in this top menu, this is showing everything that's in the pack because I've got show subfolder items ticked. So if I was to scroll through here, you can see there's a total of 802 items over 4 pages. If I click this little arrow here, take me to page 2, 3, and you see we've got horses as well. We've got props animation up here. We can narrow it down by opening up the animation folders here. Got 2D, 3D motions. So we've got G3 humans, G3 animals. Go into the human pack, female and male motions. And we've got front and side motions. If you have a front facing character like this, then you should typically stick to motions that are designed for front facing characters. You can actually use side facing motions, but don't be surprised the actual motion on the character looks all messed up, or their legs are sort of twisted out of shape all over the place. Just keep in mind that you've just used a motion that's intended for a side-facing character, not a front-facing character. They're not interchangeable really, but there may be occasions where you might want to sort of use a side-facing motion for whatever you're doing, but generally you should stick to front-facing motions for front-facing characters. You'll see we've got in here a total of 16 front-facing motions, and we can actually search for like a talk motion here, and we'll narrow it completely down to 1, which we shouldn't just assume that that's all there is. If we go cut that off, you can see there's anger here, which is a talking motion that we might be able to make use of. From playing, we might be able to use that. Not so much these dance ones, but we've got exciting, you might be able to use that in a conversation. Gossip is definitely a talk motion, and then we've got these idle stands as well. Make sure we're on frame 0 in timeline. We'll scroll the timeline up, and motion clips will appear on the motion track here, so we just click that open. You'll see at the moment there's nothing there. And the other track that we will need to pay attention to is the FFD, or full form deformation track, for reasons that will become apparent in just a moment. So I'm going to start with just this talk motion and making sure the character is selected. We'll double click on this talk motion, and we'll get this warning about sprite hands. This character has bone hands. None of the sprite hand animation from this motion will be used on the bone hands. That's completely okay. Say okay to that.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace?
And there you go, that's our first motion. Okay, so now we've got our first motion clip in here, and you'll see that this cuts across our camera frames at the moment, but we're not going to use this as is. We're going to chop it up and change and move things about so that I can show you how to go about animating a character and generally getting the character motions kind of in sync with what the character is saying. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than just going with the standard clip that you put in and not make any changes to. Also, I'm not going to do the entire timeline, like show you this process of me going through the whole timeline. I'm just going to stick to this first part so that you get the idea, and then we'll come back in at the end when I've finished animating the character's body. So first up, you'll notice this character potentially is bouncing around a lot, and that may be due to the FFD track. So if we click on the FFD track, right click on the clip, we can adjust the clip intensity here. It's at 1, and you'll see if I drag this down, see the character shrinks a little bit, indicating that it did have some FFD applied. Because we're going to be chopping up this motion clip here, chopping the clip itself up won't chop up the FFD track at the same time. These move independently of each other, so it's quite pointless even having this FFD track present in the timeline. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that track's selected, hit the delete key and get rid of it, and we don't have to think about the FFD at all from this point forward. And if we wanted to, we could add it on again at a later stage, but chances are you probably won't unless you're doing something particularly cartoony and you want particularly exaggerated moves. So I'm going to initially get out of the camera track and switch back to preview mode so that I don't have the camera changing constantly up here and I can see this whole motion. You'll see now the camera never changes because we're on the preview window, and if I want I can move this around, get closer and just look at what's going on, put it in a more ideal position, and it won't affect our camera that's going to record the final animation. You'll notice here that particular motion is the character putting her hand on her hip. I'm not going to worry about fixing things like that up until I get all my clips in place where I want them, and then I'll go through and fix things like that up. I'm just going to look at what we have. What I'm going to do is that's the character putting her hand on her hip, talking, and then putting her hands back down straight. I'm going to break the clip there by right clicking on it and selecting break. And if you want, you can actually change the names of these clips by right clicking on them and selecting rename, and I'm going to call that hands on hips, and move over here and look at what else we've got. Go, that's raise right hand. So I might stop that just before she starts to raise her other hand and break that. Rename that. Raise right hand. Might take that to about there. Pull that both hands out wide, so I'm going to break that there. Rename both hands wide. And this last bit, hands going back down to the side, so I'll just rename that. Hands to side. Now we've got these clips, we can move them around. We can copy and paste them, so we could go like that clip, do Control C, copy, go over to here, and go paste, and you'll see over here shows the hands on the hips there. So I'm going to delete that again for the moment. Now I like this raise right hand for the beginning of the animation where she's saying, "Hi, I'm Anime Amy." So I'm going to move that around. You can just slide that along over here. You'll notice when you put one clip above the other, you'll see that it completely wipes out the clip below it. The clip below is still there. You'll just want to move it out of the way before you put it on top. So if I do this, move that over there, see that clip's still there, this one's still there, and we're all good to go. Go back to the start. You'll notice now it's very hard to get this to move over onto that first frame. We may have to keyframe the first one when we're done just to fix it. At the moment we're going to go back to camera view and we're going to see what it looks like. This raise right hand at the start. I'm going to go,
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the...
so that looked okay.
Hi.
You'll notice as soon as we got off the end of the clip, nothing happens, and then she goes straight to that. What we might want from there is her hands returning to the side. So if we go back to the preview camera, In fact, what we could do is just extend this clip out. We zoom out on the timeline just a little bit by using these magnification buttons here. Go one out so that we can push these out of the way. And zoom in again. Go back to the start. Around about that point that we want her to start to bring her hand down, we click on this and adjust the speed by selecting the speed icon and dragging out the end of this. That's one way we can extend this motion and slow it down a bit.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered?
That wasn't quite what I wanted, because now she's already said hi by the time her hand gets in the air. Undo that.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy.
We might even reduce that down a bit so she lifts her arm a bit quicker.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy.
We might get this one. I'm going to do copy and paste of this one. Bring it over to here. Hands on hips. When she starts talking again, that's when I want her to put that hand on a hip. I'm going to turn FFD off so I can see the actual voices down here. Might copy hands to side over here. Just Control C. Bring it in over here. Control paste V. Move this one over. And we're going to blend these two motions by adjusting the blend box here, clicking and dragging, so that now you'll see we go from this position and the character nicely blends between those two motions. So if we look at that.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you?
And just as far as the hand gestures go, sometimes it's a good idea just to stand up yourself in the same position as whatever the character is doing and reciting the lines yourself as if you were telling someone else these lines, and to see what hand gestures you would make and perhaps try to reproduce those gestures with your character. So for instance, if I was to say hi, maybe I would wave, so that's why I've done that wave. And this sort of arms facing forward there, just talking about herself, not directing to anyone else. Now she's about to go into talking to the viewer. So usually when you talk to someone, you might direct your hands towards them. You might actually make a motion with your hand that's pointing at the you that you're talking to, which is what this hand on hips thing is kind of doing. With one hand on her hip and her other hand is perhaps extended out towards whoever she's talking to. So we could go with that next. We're going to go back to the camera, just see where that is all working. So as you can see, at that point we're not really even going to be able to see her hands. We don't have to work too hard on this next scene. So I'm going to move these things over, and we'll move this clip over so it better aligns with where she starts talking. I think it would look better if we actually saw her start to move into that position. So, and then we're going to blend that motion again with the previous one. Go a couple of frames in. And blend a few more. It's not really making a whole lot of difference between there and there. Since that's not doing a lot, I might extend this one out a bit just to fill in that gap so she's not completely standing still. Then blend that through there. So in there, because we're out closer, we might sort of bring up her hands to be in frame because she's talking about herself again. And we've got this both hands wide thing here that brings one hand up and might look good if we brought that in. So I'm going to copy this one and I'm going to paste it over here and see if this add this blend in. You can see just having that little bit of hand movement coming up looks a little bit more natural. And you can see just randomly we've still got a hands on the hip clip here. Kind of works, so I'm going to blend that onto the end there. And then we've got our hands wide that's still over here. Could blend in. This hands to the side, it was just randomly there, I might even put back. So as you can see with that one clip, I just bring this end thing up so it stops here and we preview that. We've done nearly a third of the animation from that one clip. Go back to the start and just watch it through our camera shots that we've got.
Hi, I'm Animate Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free and my pack includes this template project of me in my gaming room.
That's pretty much how you can quickly put together some body animation just using motion clips and nothing else. I'm going to go through and do the rest of the animation, but before I do that I'll just show you how to edit some of these motions, because you'll notice up here, we'll scroll along, there's one scene up here, you'll notice she's supposed to have her hand on her hip, but clearly it's not, and that just looks weird. So what we're going to do, go to where this changes, camera, then I'm going to go back to the preview camera so that we can see what we're doing. So we can fix this by opening up the 2D motion key editor here. And what we're going to do is move the playhead a couple of frames before, and we're going to set a key for the whole character. We want to set key options full body and hit set key, and then we're going to move the playhead to when she starts moving her hand around about there and set a key there. And around about where the camera changes, if I just look at the keyframes for the camera, Open up the camera keyframes. So just before there where that keyframe on the camera is, and I've got to open up the editor. We're going to grab her hand and we're just going to move it so that it is actually on her hip. And if you want to animate the hands or change their position with bone hands, you've got this little hand icon here in the 2D motion key editor. You open that up, you can change the hands into all different positions. You can choose whether you apply these changes both hands or just the left hand or the right hand, and so you've got all different positions that these will animate through. This particular character only has front-facing bone hands, so we can't change the angle here, but we can change this to look more like it's closed. So we can go into the hold position, click that. I'm just going to undo that because it's done both hands. I just want the right hand, so click the right hand and do that, and that kind of looks okay. It's not brilliant considering this character only has front-facing hands. We could further try to remedy it by layering that hand behind her hip so that we don't see as much of it using the layer editor. But before we look at that, we'll just check to see how this looks. So you can see there the fingers are all moving in. Then when she lifts her hand off, the fingers all start to move out, and we're going back into that motion. So that's how you fix motions in pre-made motion clips. That's a technique that I call bracketing, where you set up a keyframe for the whole character a bit before the area you're going to change, and then you set up a keyframe afterwards where your change goes back to the normal timeline, and then in between there you can make whatever changes you like, and it won't affect anything to do with the motion past this way, and it won't affect anything to do with the motion before this way. We could just quickly have a look at the layering at that point. Just before that, yeah, we could open the layer manager, select her left hand, no right hand we want, and we can go select one of these, send to the back of. This one moves to top, moves to bottom. This sends behind basically, and we choose what we want it to go behind. In this case we want it behind the hip, so I'll click on the hip and you'll see the hands now behind, and it will stay there. You'll see in the timeline we've now got all of these things open, and on the layer track we've just put a key in here, and there's this line that's going all the way to the end of the timeline. What you would do is keep it behind there, and then when she starts to move it again, bring up the layer manager and we go release, and you'll see now that line just extends between those two frames. This arm or hand is now back to its usual position in the layer order. So we shall see up here we've got that layer in here as well, layer track. There's a layer adjustment keyframe there. That line indicates how many frames that layer change is lasting, and that's where it ends. Now if we go back to camera mode, so that we're looking at what we're going to actually record, back to the start and press play.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free, and my pack includes this template project of me in my gaming room.
As you can see, doing those camera shots and coming in closer means we actually don't need to do much with the hands. The fact that the character is mostly has front-facing hands, a lot of the times we can't actually even see those hands, so we don't need to waste our time trying to fix them up and making them look better. For the most part, they're okay here. You could, if you wanted to, select the character, open up the hands editor and just give them a bit more natural position than what they are here. Could say go with open and maybe natural, maybe select this position, making sure we've got both hands selected again, so that now you can see the hands aren't as wide. And the keyframes for the hands you can see down here. Got right hand transform, that's what this T stands for. This stands for right hand sprite. These aren't really sprite hands, so you don't need to know that. But you can see the keyframes being added in here, just there in fact. And you'll notice if I change this right hand at this point to, let's say, a sign of some sort. So we do this point here. There's a keyframe there, and that's the original one. You'll see it works just like the camera. And the fingers will start to move over those keyframes. They'll stay that way until you change to something else. You have natural, go back to this here, and you'll see the fingers animate like that. So if you wanted to go through and animate the hands as well, that's how you do it. And you can apply transition curves to these as well. You can experiment with what these do, but the one that you would possibly use the most is gain momentum and damping, or this one, just to make a movement look a bit more natural. I'm going to delete these two keyframes for now. I don't want those, I just want my hands to be natural. You notice I deleted them and I've still got that pointing hand. That's because there are also keyframes down here for the fingers. So finger transform, left and right fingers. So I would need to get rid of this one. You'll see the hand snap back. This one here. So I'm going to go through and animate the body for the rest of the character. You've seen how I did that. You don't have to use the same motions. You can choose any of the motions up here. See what you can find within them that works with that in your animation. Just chop and change, move things around. Pretty easy. You don't need to keyframe everything. Just get to know the motions that you have and what's within them and what bits you can cut out and change. You could even save these little clips out to your custom folder if you wanted to, so that you don't have to keep doing this. So let's say if you wanted to save a motion to your custom folder, go to animation folders, 2D motions, demo motions, where I save a lot of my motions. So there's two ways you can do it. You can do a collect clip. I find the easier way to do it is to select these two flags here and put them around the clip that you want to save. So we want to save our hands on hip motion that we just edited. Select that point and click this button here, and that will do the first flag, and then go to the end and select this button here. With the character selected, we can just hit save, and we'll call that hand on hip. And you'll see that gets saved over into our 2D motion file over here. And if we wanted to, we could actually change that thumbnail to this one. Just right click on the thumbnail and do capture thumbnail. Now if I go elsewhere in the animation, so I'll take that out. So if I go over here where there's nothing happening, go to the preview camera so we can see. And then I applied this motion that we just saved by dragging it onto the character.
The Lazy Animators free course. The Lazy Animators free course.
So you can see there, that's not on her hip because we didn't actually work on that section of that motion. You'll see up here, that's the bit that we worked on, so that's got her hand on the hip. We probably should have chopped it off from about there and just save this portion, but that's the easy way to save motions directly into your custom content manager folders without doing all the collect clip nonsense that you would have to do for motions. The only time you really need to do a collect clip is when you want to collect up a performance motion, which includes all the facial animation and body animation and any sounds and stuff as well. So I'm just going to undo that. and get on with animating the rest of this, and we'll come back at the end. Okay, so I've been through and done my animation. You can see in the timeline I've added in this gossip motion at the end, but for the most part I've just repeated motions that I chopped out of that first one. So we've got hands to side, both hands wide, raise right hand, and I've added in this idle breath motion, which is this one here, just for one of the close-up scenes because we didn't need a lot of movement from her. Got another idle breath there, and in that scene you'll see this is a close-up. It's just idle breath because we don't need a lot of movement, but we don't want to completely still. And then I had both hands wide just to get a little bit of a hand coming up and a bit more movement during that close-up to make it interesting. A lot of the times I've just simply repeated, copy and pasted basically things that I got out of that very first motion. I'll just play through the whole thing with the camera mode on, not the preview camera, so we can see what it looks like, what it's going to look like when it gets recorded. Hit the play button. In fact, I might turn off the timeline and play it through.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free and my pack includes this template project of me in my gaming room. Did you know you can learn to make and rig characters just like me with the Lazy Animators free course? The fastest way to rig and animate your first character in Cartoon Animator. You'll find the link in this video's description. It's completely beginner friendly and you'll learn so much.
There you go, that's what it's looking like. Just before we finish up here, if you feel like that hair is way too floppy and distracting, you can actually adjust the spring bones by opening up the spring bone editor with the character selected when you do that, obviously, so that you get the spring bones in this character, and you'll see all of these pigtails have spring bones. We can either adjust the settings for those down here, or we can take one of these presets. I believe the actual preset it's using is the default, so if we wanted it to be a little less swinging about, we might go with this one, or we could try this one. Slow, fast, select this one. Doesn't seem to have too much of a change down here from the default. What's the default? Clockwise, 180, 180. This is how much angle it swings, so these things will swing a complete 180 arc, but if we have it on stiff, I'll just go sort of 5 degrees either way. Could try that, just see what that plays like.
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free and my pack includes this template
You'll
project
notice that's
in my gaming room.
a lot less bouncy compared to the default. If we put it back to the default and play it,
Hi, I'm Anime Amy.
you can see
Have you discovered
the
me
difference
in the
there.
Reallusion marketplace?
I'm quite liking the less springiness, so I'm going to put it on stiff and turn that off. And now when we play the animation,
Hi, I'm Anime Amy. Have you discovered me in the Reallusion marketplace? I'm completely free and my pack includes this template project of me in my gaming room. Did you know you can learn to make and rig characters just like me with the Lazy Animators free course? The fastest way to rig and animate your first character in Cartoon Animator. You'll find the link in this video's description. It's completely beginner friendly and you'll learn so much.
so there you go, that was a lot less distracting with the hair. So yeah, if you find spring bones are a little too flexible, that's how easy it is to adjust the settings on those without having to go into the poser or edit the character in any way at all. Don't forget, at this point you should probably do a save if you haven't already. Cartoon Animator has been known to crash, and even though it has a save file, there's every chance you could lose your work. So I'm going to do a save before we move on. And I'm just going to save over the top of my previous save by selecting it and clicking overwrite. So at this point, the animation is really starting to take shape, but what it lacks is facial expressions to really bring the character to life. You can see she's sort of just staring at us with glass eyes at the moment. So in part 3 of this 3-part series, I'll show you how to animate your character's face and make it a little bit more lifelike and obviously have more expression. So be sure to click through to part 3.